time for us to start. So we should have Cheryl, Briggs, Bernardo, and Marques, and William Truran. I know I saw Cheryl briefly. I see Bernardo. Wonderful, great. And let me just double check. There's William. Hello. Welcome to the session. So each of you has a short talk. So we're just going to dive right into it. And what we'll do is have each of you provide, like 5 minutes or less, a quick intro to what you're to talk about. And it'll be one after another. So we'll go Bernardo, and then Cheryl, and then William. And after that, we'll have time for all of our questions and discussion for the rest of our session. So, Bernardo, take it away with sharing a bit about what you submitted.
So, hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. As you can see here, I'm going to present a team effort. This is together with colleagues from two distinct universities. Samuel is also an author here, so if he want to join in, feel free. So I'm going to present the work beyond traditional interfaces, how to teach extended reality and multimodal interaction at the doctoral level. As many of you may know, extended reality is now being integrated in different fields, from education to entertainment, industry, healthcare, and so on. And of course, this brings a demand for a skilled workforce. But sometimes there is a misconception that this workforce only needs programming skills to be able to use extended reality. But our team believes actually that this type of workforce needs to much more than that. It needs to master all different aspects beyond what the technology itself. So we believe that this type of professionals need to think, to design, and to be able to evaluate this type of systems in order for this type of technology to actually be relevant for this type of areas of application. And to do that, we proposed an advanced human-machine interaction course. This is the lecture to a doctoral program in computer science. As I told before, this is a joint effort by two different universities, Aveiro, from where me and Samuel actually are, and also the University of Porto. And of course, this brings also a level of students with different backgrounds. Some of them come from the masters, others are actually from the industry. They all have different backgrounds, and actually we may also have some that does not have any type of expertise on computer science itself. Regarding the organization and the curriculum of the course, we begin with some fundamental aspects of human-machine interaction. Then we move forward by teaching human-centered design and development, when we touch a little bit on understanding the users, the scenarios, the goals, task analysis, requirements, and the main aspects of how to conduct an evaluation. Later, we introduce multimodal interactive systems. We talk about input and output modalities, fusion and fission, also conversational interfaces. And later on the course, we also talk a little bit about extended reality. We start with 3D user interfaces, and then we move into virtual and augmented reality. Also the aspects relevant with the interaction, and we finish a little bit talking about qualitative or augmented in virtual reality and how that is relevant. By the 7 week of the course, the students also have to do a pitch about their assignments, which I will talk more in a little bit, and we finish with a project presentation by the end of the semester. As you have seen, this course is taught during 8 weeks, 4 hour sessions. This is done in English. We start with the lectures about all of the topics that I mentioned before. Then sometimes when that is the case, we have an advanced topic that is talked a little bit by the students. And we also try to have some group discussions. And as some of you already did with your courses, we also have a project-based learning methodology here for the students to learn and to work a little bit on their ideas. This is a hands-on activity also during the lectures, and we also try to have visits to the laboratories, as you can see here for some of the photos. These are our classrooms and also the virtual and augmented laboratory at our university at Aveiro. Regarding the assessment, we have two major topics. The students have to talk about an advanced topic, which they can choose. We have here some ideas on some topics from effective computing to haptics, human-robot interaction, and so on. But they can also choose other different topics, which can be aligned with their interests. And regarding the other 60% of their grades, this is focus on the development of a mini project with a human-centered design methodology in the mix. And I will give some examples now to afterwards for some of the works that have been done. On our last session, we had 6 students. This is from a pool of 18. So 1/3 of the students decided to have this course, which is an elective course, and we believe this is a good result. We have different familiarities with the human-machine interaction and human-centered design, and we also had 2 foreign students. Here you can see some examples of the student, what the students actually created. In this example, one of the students decided to explore the use of augmented reality and how voice and gestures could be combined to actually control an autonomous vehicle, which you can see here as well. And actually this work is currently going to an interesting phase, which is a user evaluation with some participants. And the goal of the student is to make a publication afterwards. So the course was very important for his PhD topic in that sense. And another example of that you can see here, this is based on how virtual reality can be used for stroke rehabilitation, and the student explored a little bit different types of input and also of output using a physical pen and also gestures. And regarding the output, how visual or also voice recognition could also be used. The student is currently has already submitted this work for a journal publication. As a final remark, of course, we need to take a lot of things into consideration during our proposal and during this semester. We had the collaboration of 4 different teachers from 2 different universities, but overall, we were able to provide a program which the students reacted well. The flexibility in having the freedom to select their own topic was very well received, since this could be used for them for their PhD topics. And of course, we needed to take into consideration how to evaluate the students, since all projects were different, and we need, of course, to be flexible but also fair at the same time. And the final feedback, students enjoyed very much the course and are willing to recommend it and to other students in the future. And with this, I finished my presentation. If anyone is interested, you can also find this work regarding the education paper from last year, Eurographics. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernardo. All right, Cheryl.
So my talk today is on complexity to clarity, trying to rethink rubrics for iterative industry-aligned learning. The problem we had was basically overload when it comes to rubrics. We ended up having multiple faculty with a different rubric for every single project. Everything started getting kind of out of control in a way, because every project was different and had different criteria, and it was difficult for students to identify what the priorities were per assignment. And when it came to grading, faculty were spending way too much time just parsing the criteria instead of mentoring the students to become better. So we wanted to really focus or shift the focus from the grading conversations on, instead of points, we wanted to talk about their progress and how they could grow as artists and as technical artists and animators and so forth. So what we ended up asking ourselves was, what are we really assessing here? Do we want them to comply with criteria, or do we want them to align their work with industry practices and skill development and applying those skills? So we decided to drop things down to 2 basic rubrics, and they can be used. We've used them in all courses at this point and on the art side. So the first is a work in progress, and the other is the final submission. And instead of rewriting criteria for every project, we clarified our intent, where the student is along in their journey of creating something and how they are kind of evolving through that process. So we then, of course, aligned the rubrics with our program's grading scale. As before, they weren't quite lined up exactly, so it was very unclear. And that way, it really accurately reflects their performance expectations at each stage and ensure they have consistency and fairness and transparency. And they can see, especially through the work in progress and iterative process, how they're improving if what they're doing is getting better. So the work in progress rubric focuses on their trajectory rather than the polish. It's asking, are they on pace? Are they iterating? Are they responding to feedback that we're giving them? Are they making progress where they should be along the way? And it gives the students a clear signal early without penalizing them for exploring or unfinishing work, which allows us to intervene before any kind of problem gets baked into that assignment. And then from there, we have a final submission. So once everything's been iterated and critiqued, and then they have one more chance to make improvements, they get their final grade on the assignment, and we give them a grade that's basically aligned with clear language that shows whether they're above and beyond, or whether they're at an actual professional level, or whether they're just working at graduate level, because the students I teach right now are graduates, but this can be definitely adapted to undergraduate work. And then, of course, whether they're even meeting the minimum requirements, or if they have some significant deficiencies or the work's not acceptable at all. So once we've got these rubrics into position, we also, a lot of the assignments we do critique in class. And if it's critiqued in class, we actually open up a Zoom link and record the actual presentation and critique, so that we can then take that information and give them written feedback with the help of, this is a great use for AI, because it helps take that transcript and then reformats it in a way that makes it digestible and understandable for the students. Otherwise, if it's not live presentation, then we do just a video. I can do a quick video recording while looking at their work and give them verbal feedback. So they then get a video from me. And if I got that transcript, I then add that to ChatGPT, which gives it into written feedback. It makes it much more accessible to the students, because they can both look at that video and get written takeaway from it without adding too much to my plate as an instructor. What's great about this, almost immediately, feedback conversations improve. Students have a stronger expectation at each stage. They have their assignment criteria, but they're not focused on just checking boxes anymore. They're looking at their growth and if they're actually hitting marks that we expect them to be. And it also helps with grading friction and still allowing us to maintain high standards. So why does this matter? It matters because in industry, their drafts and deliverables are different. So we want to reinforce that in reality, and we want them to understand that it's about iterating the work, attempting it, getting it better until either we run out of time or they hit that professional standard. So simple takeaway, you don't need to have really complicated rubrics to assess complex work. You just need to be clear on intent and give them important, meaningful feedback. And this 2-rubric model paired with verbal feedback and the AI assisted summaries is scalable and adaptable and effective across pretty much any production focused course. So thank you. And I look forward to the discussion afterwards.
Really nice. It's great to see. Thank you so much, Cheryl. All right, and that brings us to our final presentation for this session. William, take it away. Cheryl and I will turn off our cameras.
Yeah, hopefully you guys can see everything and hear me all right.
Looks great. Sounds great.
I'm going to build off of that first, talk a little bit, talking about teaching AR, augmented reality, through branded moments. I teach at UCF in the graphic design program. And just like I'm going to talk through these 4 kind of points. I'm going to talk about what is AR, why I think it's important. So I'm going to show some student examples, which will be most of the time, and just like real briefly some tools. So what is AR? Everyone should be like pretty familiar with this at this point. It's augmented reality. It's the concept of like overlaying a digital interface or digital experience onto our reality. So on the right here, we have one of the most popular, which is Pokemon Go, where it kind of just like renders the Pokemon onto our reality, trying to kind of merge that kind of experience. Another example of the kind of this interactivity is MR or mixed reality, where the interface or the digital experience actually kind of connects with the physical. If anyone's ever used the measure tool in their phone or iPhone, it like puts points into the 3D space and kind of mixes it a little bit more intentionally. Another term you'll hear a lot is extended reality, which is just kind of like an umbrella term for all of this in VR. And I think for a graphic design program, we don't often see these tools being taught. But if we look around, like the usage has been growing every year, like on top of itself. Some just rough numbers here. We've got 1 billion augmented reality users worldwide. We've got 4 million lenses, which is the Snapchat augmented reality feature. And those features are being used over 4.5 trillion times. And then Pokemon Go, which is like a 9-year-old game, still is having around 100 million users every month. So we know that users are liking it and users are using it. So in our program, we started talking about like, well, how can we build branded experiences? I think often we see kind of in education space when we talk about AR, it's more like a fine art tool, like where you can see sculptures or interact with kind of conceptual moments. But how do we ground those moments into a reality where our students can see the commercial value in it? So I'm going to spend a little bit of time here going through these 3 examples, which I have up here. I know video in Zoom is often like really rough. So if you guys ever want to just like go see these websites, these are all student websites that are live now. You can just go and check out the work directly yourselves. So the task for this project was like, how do you take a pre-existing brand moment or brand interaction and make it more engaging and a little bit more sticky so that it kind of will resonate more with the user? So this student took Agatha, what is it called? Agatha All Along, that Marvel show. And the idea was, how do we take the pause screen in Disney or Hulu and not make it just a passive experience, but one that the user can engage with? And I'm going to play this halfway through with the sound off. But the idea is you point your phone at the QR code while you're waiting for someone to get their snacks or use the restroom. And then you could experience this kind of branded moment. So we're taking this passive moment and creating something that's a little bit more story driven and something you might share with your friends. The next one I'm going to look at is using McDonald's and a crossover with the Tron movie. So all the students had to make videos to show and kind of explain the usage case. So that's what we're watching here. And one cool thing for graphic design students at the very least is that these AR experiences have to build off of other experiences or other materials. So students are getting to design their own McDonald's boxes or their own splash screens or own graphics that these are all launching from. And then at the very like best case, there's going to be an offer and an interactive that can continue past that experience. So just thinking about like the long term and kind of the return on investment that these brands will be looking for. It also encourages students to experiment with a lot of new software. So students are using traditional skills like sketching, but they're also going into Blender and learning other skills that we can't really traditionally bring into our classes as easy. And then the last one I'm going to share was a capstone project for a student who did not need to use AR, but was interested enough from the other classwork to like incorporate it. He did a blind box series based off this concept of milk candy coming alive. And the alive part were these little toys he made and printed, but he wanted them to really come alive. And he did that through augmented reality, where you scan these little trading cards and then the figures kind of come alive and dance, kind of just building upon that story and building upon that experience he wanted people to have with his blind box. All right, so the last thing I'll do is just wrap this up with tools. Adobe Aero used to be Adobe's version of this, but they let that die and kind of killed it off last year. So looking forward to the next semester, I'll be teaching all these things. I've been looking at Scenery app, Lens Studio, which is Snapchat. Unreal Engine has some really in-depth tools, and then Eighth Wall. Most of these have like a student version or education version you can look into. And I think that's my 5 minutes. Thank you for listening. If you want to contact me or if you want to get the slides, you can scan that QR code.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so we can bring back Cheryl and Bernardo as well. for discussion. Again, for attendees, if you wouldn't mind, please make sure to use the Q&A to start putting in some questions. Great. Well, thank you all. And I mean, I think all of you are like rethinking teaching in your areas and exploring new things. One of the things I wanted to check with Cheryl was, what is it? How do you make sure that what you're having your students evaluated on and working on is in alignment with what industry needs, and how does that tie in, and are you communicating with industry about what the students are doing?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a lot of alumni, as I'm sure most programs do have a lot of alumni working out in industry, and we do have a strong connection with the alumni that we have. So every year we get either Zoom presentations from them or just conversations with the faculty, or as well as live presentations that come in. And those are the opportunities where we get to talk to them and ask them, and they also review student work and give feedback to the students from their perspective as well. And that dialogue is really important because it keeps us all connected and making sure we're on top of things. It does take some legwork and effort, depending, because I used to be in a different program where we didn't have dedicated people doing that. And so since I was running that program, I took it upon myself to make sure those things were happening. So when I joined this program, the rubric problem came up, but I had kind of already solved that in the prior program, so I kind of pulled that forward. And but yeah, so it does take legwork and time to just keep those relationships going with your alumni that are working in the industry. But most of them, they'd rather give back that way than money to the university, so it's kind of easy, like, to say, hey, would you like to give back, or pay it forward to the next generation? And you know how this industry is, most people do. So it makes it pretty easy there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I definitely sense for both William and Bernardo working in the XR, MR, AR, VR spaces that there's an element of that industry connection in that, there's so much being done on industry side with these technologies, but it is not necessarily at the forefront. It's not the most famous movie of the year. It's not the biggest video game of the year, but brands are using these technologies, and having your initiatives to get that in the hands of students. This ties into a question that an attendee shared here. Joel shared that have there been expressions of interest in building the content for mixed reality? And I'm not sure entirely the context of Joel's question. I mean, he mentions that there was a good bit of discussion about this, and there was an augmented enterprise summit at Dallas last year. There's a lot of existing and new applications and future, in enterprise, and so I'm not sure if Joel's asking have you been hearing from industry that about interest in these types of technologies, or also, one of the things that comes to mind when I first read a question like that is, have students been asking about it as well? Because these are typically not the kinds of things that there is an entirely dedicated course for. It's not something that necessarily shows up in the catalog. So, either one of you can start on addressing that from either a student pull or an industry pull kind of perspective.
You want to start, William?
Sure. So I think there's like a couple parts to this question. As faculty and teachers, we all want our students to be curious, and we always want them to bring ideas to the table, but they can't bring those ideas to the table unless they've experienced them. So I see this like when I'm always like, hey, this project's gonna be augmented reality. All the students, I'm teaching undergrad graphic design students, so they're not very technical. It's like a totally separate kind. Bernardo's students seem like dense and deep into it. But like, so my students are like, I didn't even think that was a possibility, right? It's not like they don't want to do it. It's like they didn't think it was an option for them. So then when we build this project, like their future projects, they're like, oh, now that I know this technology is like available and accessible enough for me to like kind of learn and adapt and build upon, then there's like this interest of like, okay, like I've got a package, but like how do I make it more than just like that package? And then to answer your question about industry, the only kind of kind of anecdotal data points I've got are that when the students are interviewing, these projects are like one of the ones that the interviewers are the most interested in because it shows like this new level of different thinking. So like the value my students can bring to a table is purely like what concepts can they bring and then fulfill and create. And if they're interviewing and they're like, hey, I've got these like basket of tools that my competition or other people don't, I think it's just like an interest point in that regard.
Okay, so I guess I can start with the student's perspective. Here we presented the work for PhD students, but actually in our university we have a course dedicated to virtual and augmented reality. And I presented that work 2 years ago here at the winter SOIREE. We had been teaching this course for over 10 years now. We are actually on the 12th edition. And we actually this year we have to open another lecture for the course because we have so many students asking for this elective course. It's actually teach to 9 different master degrees, which makes it a lot of hell, as you can imagine, taking all of the different backgrounds into consideration. But it is at the same time very fulfilling because we can see that different perspectives in different areas all want to learn a little bit more about what the technology can do. How can I learn them a little bit more? On the industry perspective, at least here in Portugal, we are a small country, so there isn't a lot of companies trying to use this type of technology. But we actually have a working relation with Bosch, which is international, and we have been working with them for 3 research projects now. And this year we also have master students that they actually enjoyed so much the work that he has done that he's now working for the company itself, and they are starting to create their first augmented reality application. So we are starting to see some dissemination of knowledge and starting to see some of the expertise moving from academia to the industry. We also have a relationship with the rehabilitation center. This is not of course focus on the making money. This is of course focusing on quality of life for stroke survivors. And we have a lot of research lines where we are exploring how this type of technology can assist quality of life, motivation, adherence to rehabilitation, and so on. So I believe there is a lot of progression still to do, but we are starting to see a lot of perspective changing and adoption, at least here from our point of view, of course.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to have a question here, and it'll circle around. We'll do Bernardo, William, and Cheryl on this, since my speaker volume is set for Bernardo right now, and actually, my question for each of you, and I think this will be great for with Bernardo, is because of the student self-selection in terms of the projects, and is like, were there any surprises? You probably had your own idea what might happen when you initiated this with the students and the PhD candidates and so on. So, what surprises did you encounter when you were implementing all of this? And then that same question will go to William and Cheryl as we circle around.
And this is very interesting. For example, we had the different work that I didn't present here, which is focus on brain-machine interfaces. This was something that we were not expecting to see on this type of course. The autonomous vehicle itself, the student had access to the hardware, which of course brought a different type of approach to the work, but we didn't have that type of conditions to offer to the students. Thankfully, he was able to get it, and he already had some expertise, which of course helped a little bit. He was not someone that needed to start from scratch. He already had done the master course that I mentioned before, so he was able to do and to have some expertise with Unity and creating some virtual environments and so on. And he took this opportunity to work a little bit about with the augmented reality. I believe these two were the ones that were not expecting at all. Regarding the advanced topics, we also had some students from industry choosing some topics related with their backgrounds to be able to explore a little bit more some advanced topics, which was actually something that we were also not expecting to have anyone from industry at the first stage. And they also brought a different perspective why this type of technology are relevant, and how actually one of the students actually selected the topic of his PhD after having our course, which was also a good result for us.
Wonderful, thanks. And then, William, I imagine that you ran into some surprises. I mean, introducing students who don't traditionally get into, the computer graphics per se, development, AR, and all of that. And once you put this into their hands, I mean, what did you find?
Yeah, I think there's like two pretty big surprises. One was when students are doing AR, there's like kind of two ways you can go approach it. It's like kind of like a 2.5 dimension where you have flat planes kind of projected in 3D space, which so any traditional student could do that. Let's bring in their JPEGs and kind of animate them in there. And then the other one's 3D. The students never have any experience with 3D, but I see like that the interest is so high that they'll like go out and teach themselves Blender with like YouTube tutorials so that they can bring it back in the class. Like the interest level's high enough that they're like, oh, like I want to learn, right? Which is like the best thing that we could possibly have. It's just like there's a curiosity and like I'm not driving it. I give them the excuse. I'm like, you could just bring in your logos, you can bring in your 2D things, like that's fine. And like more than half the room is always like, no, I'm gonna try to learn Blender for this. So like that's the first big surprise. And then the second surprise is this, though this is a project about technology, it's also a project about like where do we inject technology into branded experiences. So like the offer I gave them was like on a package, kind of like the McDonald's version, where it's like the package design, you scan it and then it does something to like elevate that experience. But I never expected people to do things like the pause screen on streaming, or one student took a mural on the side of a business and animated it so like customers could like kind of experience the company in a different way on the outside of the building. Another student did it so you could kind of get the objects that are in the package out and see them in detail. Like they rendered out it was game controllers, and they rendered out the game controllers and had it come out of the box so you kind of see it and like look around it where you can't do when it's a closed container. So it's just like, yeah, it was a surprise to see like the enthusiasm students got when I didn't make them do work. They wanted to do it. And then just the creativity of where they could inject these things in areas I would never have thought of myself.
Excellent. I mean, if you have students that are like all of a sudden want to learn and are pursuing their own, explorations of like, okay, that's it. I'm learning
Yeah.
this tool for this. Like you have cracked the code. That's
Yeah,
really
no,
nice.
it was one of the more rewarding experiences teaching I've had so far, for sure, this class that we do.
That's fantastic. And how about you, Cheryl? I mean, with you're completely transparent. This is one of these things where, academia is like this, and we do it like this, and these are the words, and you're going to base the evaluation on how relevant it is to industry. Wait, what? So, were there any surprises and all that? And maybe that's both from a working with students' perspective and potentially working with administration perspective.
Well, from the student perspective, I was really surprised we didn't get a lot of pushback. Maybe this answer is the same for both, because I was surprised we didn't get a lot of pushback from them, because there are a few students who, when I sent out a survey asking how they felt like things were, most of them said they liked the simplified format of the rubric, and because they really appreciated the verbal feedback they were getting. That was specific to them, right? And so there were a couple of surprises with students who were like, where do I find the rubric? Like they were just looking at the number grade and they weren't even looking at anything else before that anyway. And then the difference between undergrads, because I first developed this about probably 10 years ago with an undergrad class. I was teaching an introduction to Maya, and it was 150 students, which was quite overwhelming for me, as you can imagine, and it broke out into 5 labs. And so I was trying to figure out a way of how do I grade 150 students for every project and keep it, to industry relativity. And now, of course, I didn't give verbal feedback to all 150 of them, but what I did do differently for that is I wrote up based on everything I was seeing, the general problems for each letter grade level, and then giving them that general feedback to everyone and just saying, if you'd like more one-on-one feedback, come see me in my office hours. And I was surprised that I would only get like 3 or 4 per week to come back to me. And it wasn't repeaters, because once I started talking to them, they kind of understood my thought process and they didn't come back because they understood how I was doing this, you know. So yeah, I think overall it was just the amount of the least amount of pushback. It was more embraced by everyone. Yeah.
Well, okay, my head is still spinning from 150 Intro to Maya students. Are in that scenario, like are those 150 students, are they focused on, computer graphics related
That was like a
majors?
state requirement course. It was kind of like
That's a
anybody
state
in
required
digital
course?
media. Yeah, it was a digital media requirement. So
Okay.
there were different levels of state requirements. Like there's gen eds, and then there's
Hmm.
the core courses for your major. And so it was at the time it was just any digital media student who was
Okay,
going
so
had to take that
it is
class.
digital media students
Yeah.
that are taking that course. Again, it's really interesting about Williams' presentation in that the graphic design students, traditionally when I hear graphic design, I'm thinking of, okay, they're working with Illustrator, they're working with Photoshop, they're working with After Effects and things like that, which all are wonderful tools, but they don't necessarily introduce a an element of user interactivity. And so yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl. And then so William, like, was there any particular hangups or hurdles for your graphic design students to kind of grok, for lack of a better word, the concept of interactivity in this versus what they would traditionally produce that would play out in a more linear fashion?
I think so. When I was like first spitballing the class, I was talking to some current students, be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about teaching this class. One of the projects could be augmented reality," and they're like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." I was like, "What would you make with it?" And they're like, "I don't know." It was like I really like when you gave them like just an open field of like, "You've got this technology. We'll show you how to make it. What are you going to make?" And they were just like, "That's it's like too broad." I think when I was able to figure out that I need to speak to graphic design students, my field, through their language of like, we're going to create a package design or you're going to create a branded moment. This is part of like the brand expression that we've been exploring for, 2 or 3 semesters at that point. Um, then it made sense to them because they're like, oh, I'm trying to get this brand to be sticky. I'm trying to get it to be like something in their memory, something that they share with their friends, something that feels a little bit unique or novel. So in that regard, I think when it was like, hey, make AR, yeah, 100%, they're just like blank stare. But when you're like, hey, take this thing we already know and then make it cooler or make it more engaging, um, that also makes sense for them. We also, just not to go on too long, we also teach Figma in interactive design through our graphic design program. So there already is a sense of like engaging the user, getting the user to stay with the website, engaging them from the first to the last scroll. So there is this idea, like they do understand that they have responsibility for the interaction that the student's having with their projects.
Great, thank you. And actually, that leads to a question for Bernardo. And before I ask the question, by the way, I'm just going to mention again to our attendees that the Q&A section is open and currently has no questions. So, please go ahead and use that so that I don't monopolize the session time. But, William had mentioned about this, hey, you can do anything. And then, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. And essentially, Bernardo, it sounds like you're offering your students the same, that kind of opportunity of like, hey, you can do, like, you get to design it. Do you have instances of someone, just, wow, I just don't even know what to do? And how do you kind of get them over that kind of hurdle?
Well, in our case, since this is an elective course, I believe that when they choose this type of content, virtual and augmented reality, they already know a little bit about what it is possible to do. And in our case, some of them were eager to learn how they could apply this to their courses, so to their PhD topics. So I believe that in that sense, this was a little easier, at least to those that already had an idea of what they were willing to do during their PhDs. But for example, in the master's degree that we teach, we don't have that same level of dedication or thinking first what they most of them, so I selected this elective course because I just want to do a game. About what? I have no idea. And then the problem starts. So what do you like? What is the best approach? What type of game? And sometimes they want to start with the game and the end result is not that at all. And usually what we try to do is, since we try to give priority to a human-centered approach, we want them not to think about the application, but to think about what problem are you trying to resolve, what are the necessary users, what are the requirements, and after that, so if you are trying to introduce a level of technology, what should it be able to do? And then we try to move into virtual and augmented reality. Of course, we need to teach a lot of concepts first for them to understand what is possible. But the idea here is not for them just to do something because they can. We want them to do something that has some value. And of course, if that can help them with their PhD, which actually happened, that is, of course, for us a very good result.
Wonderful. I had a question coming in, following up on that. The That was actually interesting. Cheryl, because I'm sorry, Bernardo, you had mentioned about the value proposition of that, and so it actually led me to thinking about a question for Cheryl, and that is, when are there other courses where besides the massive Maya, I'll call it, course, that you implemented this approach? And was there any change in how you presented things to students in terms of there being a value proposition, and like more directly connecting the topics being covered and being evaluated to, career path, industry, etc. Because a lot of times, students are coming out of high school into these undergraduate programs. Bernardo has these PhD students that, okay, they're on a mission, they know what they're doing. But a lot of times, at least in my experience, I've seen lots of times where an undergraduate comes in and okay, they're used to, like, I have to take this course, I have to get this grade, I get, move on to take another course. It sounds like, implementing this idea of there being a value proposition might also be an element to what you were doing.
Sure. I think that especially in a class like that intro to my class where every major has to take it, um, some of them were graphic designers and they didn't think it was at all relevant to what they were studying until I showed them that you can like render in layers or Photoshop files out of Maya. So it's always about like trying to reach them where they are. And once they find the reason, then they're invested into what they're learning. And so I've always made it that this, especially at that level, that the assignments are more open-ended and here's what I'm giving you. But if you have an idea that would apply more towards what you're trying to achieve, as far as your particular goals in your career, then I'm open to that and discussing it with you, and we can adjust the assignment for you a little bit, so that you meet that goal. So yeah, it's a matter of, just kind of connecting with them, making sure they understand that everything they learn, no matter whether they think it's relevant or not, will someday inform their future. So I always tell them, as an undergrad, I changed my major. I think it was 7 times in the first couple of years because I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I hopped around pretty much every semester and changed because I didn't know. And, no one in my family had ever gone to college, so nobody could help me advise me. So it was kind of like try something every semester until you find where you fit. And so I tell them that story, and they, I think, realize that it's okay to be unsure and it's okay to learn things that you don't think are going to inform your future because they probably still will.
See now that you positioned it as you changed your major 7 different times in college, and I think that when you're telling stories to your grandchildren, you can tell them, well, I majored in 7 different things when I was in college.
But
And
every class that I took has helped me along the way. And I have specific examples. We don't have time for that. Maybe over coffee one day, I can tell you.
that sounds great. So we're getting actually you've sparked a lot of interest, Cheryl. So we're getting a couple questions in the chat for specifically for you. So the first one comes from Samuel, and it says, "Could you elaborate a bit more on the feedback and how that's operationalized? You mentioned Zoom transcription. What's the overall workflow for that feedback?"
Oh, sure. So basically, I'll record the feedback either using like QuickTime or OBS or, Zoom. You can do that in any of them where you share your screen and you're looking at their project and you can kind of draw over or do whatever you need to do there. And I do that also with like questions on software, by the way, not related to a grade, but like if they have a specific question they're running into, they'll send me their questions with their file and then I'll open it up and show them how to fix it or whatever and then send it back to them. But then for grading though, I'll upload it to, I have my own Vimeo, but you could do this on YouTube in a private unlisted like video, and it'll auto transcribe it into closed captioning. And then because I use Vimeo, I can download it. I think you can download it through YouTube as well, the transcript. Otherwise, you can just copy and paste it into a text document and then copy and paste it into like Chat GPT. Ask it to reframe it as I'm giving notes back to the student. This is the transcript for what I discussed. And it does a really great job of just reformatting it and making it sound clean from that transcript. And then I just copy and paste that. And the students know I tell them up front, I'm using AI to help me take this up because I'm only one human being and I'm trying to get this to you as fast as possible. And, they are pretty understanding about that. And, you do have to read through it and make sure, AI is telling them the right things. But it really does not take a lot of time once you train the AI basically what you want. But sometimes it goes haywire and it does something like completely off the mark. And I have to say, no, I need you to go back and redo it the way you did it for these students. And it does a pretty good job. So
Yeah.
I see Topher is asking about if I used any other chat, anything besides Chat GPT. I have not for that particular method. I kind of started with it and it worked pretty well. So I just have been sticking with it.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, you just took care of. I was going to
That's
segue
okay.
right over to
I saw it
Topher's
pop up.
thing, but I think that the notes there about both the implementation of a machine learning AI in your workflow, and you used a few different things because speech to text has been around, and now there's lots of tools for that. This very Zoom session is going to have a transcript and all of that. I don't know, William and Bernardo, are you leveraging automation tools like that in your own workflows? Does that fit with what you're doing right now so far, or is that something that's kind of out of scope? I'm just curious about your own experiences in that way.
At least in our side, we are not using any type of similar tools, not because we didn't have the time, I guess. Maybe we are curious to do it. So we actually started to do everything from scratch to put this course together for the PhD students. So we sometimes were working on Sundays afternoon to do everything ready for Monday. So I guess we were just thinking about how everything could be put together in order for the students to learn more about last class, but in a sense that everything would still make sense at the end. That was why we started with the human-centered design, moved to multimodal interaction, and finally extended reality. So perhaps we have the possibilities in the future to revise the program and the tools that we use, but at least for now we didn't have the opportunity to do so. Also from the feedback from the students, none of them mentioned the need for that. Since we had the 4 hours of classes, which is a lot, we of course tried to do some breaks, some meetings, some group discussions in order to make it feel more smooth. So I guess since we had a lot of contact with the students, at least me and Samuel were there the 4 hours for every class, so we were able to talk with everyone, to meet with everyone, do a lot, to provide a lot of feedback and the suggestions. So I guess we were able to have a more contact with the students, which at least for a PhD level, which it is not common to do so.
Thank you. William, how about in your environment?
Yeah, I mean, I've used it personally, been experimenting with vibe coding quite a bit just to see can we rapidly prototypes. Um, and then I've used it to like expound on my materials I give students. Like I usually give students very little because that's what I always experienced in industry. And they're always like, give me more. So I'll always like fluff it up a little bit more and give a little bit more details through like AI. Be like, hey, what would a student want here? The one thing I heard another professor in our program say yesterday was, we know you're using AI, so you can't get mad at when we use AI. And it wasn't, and like our program, all the faculty in it are like very open for our students using AI. It's using it responsibly and intelligently. So when we use it, I don't think there's been any problems. So yeah, I don't, does that kind of answer the question you were having?
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
can
Go
I
ahead, Cheryl.
interject real quick and say something? Yeah, I don't upload their work to AI and ask it to give them feedback. So, I don't, I'm not, and that's what I tell them. I'm like, it's a tool to help me contextualize my feedback to you faster than me having to go and then transcribe my own notes into something that's readable. So, yeah.
So we have about 5 minutes left. So I have one last question that we can go around. We'll do Cheryl, William, and Bernardo, and that would be, do you have any recommendation? Like, what would be the first thing you would recommend if someone else sees your presentation? Is like, I want to do that. Like, what do you think that you would recommend to someone who sees what you shared and wants to do that?
Um, So that's a tough question because I would want to know, like, I guess the dynamics of their department and if they'd be open to it first. I mean, it depends on that, but if all of that's okay, I would say try it out, just go for it and tell the students, be upfront with what you're doing. Tell them I've simplified this process of grading because I want to give you the most impactful information that will help you grow. And to do that on a one-on-one basis, this is how I'm structuring it. And, I always tell the students, if you have a problem with anything I'm doing, please come talk to me. Please don't put it on my annual evaluation. And, I try to like give them good industry practice there too, because I said, if you have a problem with someone you're working with and you just go and you tell the boss about it, the first thing they're going to ask you is, did you speak to that person? And did you start a conversation? So start down. A lot of them are intimidated to talk to faculty. So I try to make myself as approachable as possible. And some of them the students still don't like have that depending on maybe their cultural background or whatever. So you have to kind of meet the student where they are and kind of guide them through their journey. And that's what we're here for, right? That's the exciting part.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. William?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it through the lens of like a faculty member who's never touched AR. And what I would say is just like don't hesitate and don't spend too much time trying to figure out the perfect tool. Like spend some time Googling, find a tool, and just get your hands dirty. And then don't be afraid to adapt to a different tool like what I'm doing now because Adobe got rid of Arrow. Like our tools aren't the creative output, right? We are, so we just need to figure out what tool we're using. And then potentially just add on an AR portion to another project you're doing. Like if you're teaching package design, spend another 3 or 4 weeks after that package is done, just like building off of that momentum.
Excellent. Thank you. And Bernardo?
Yeah, I think that more than the tools itself, it's paramount to have a good tool and to be able to provide the students with examples and so on. I agree with that, but I also agree with Cheryl when she said being approachable, being able to have time for the students, to be able to, of course, learn to receive feedback, and if possible, on the next class, yeah, you were right about that. I Google because also sometimes teachers also need to Google some things. We don't know everything about everything. So I guess that we also have to be humble and to be able to approach students with the level of responsibility that we if we were on their shoes, how would we like to be approached, and if sometimes they are not always able to speak for themselves, we need to have different perspectives for different students, and that I think that is the most important part. Of course, having a team, and I talk because in our case, at least, we were four teachers. Being able to talk with other people was also very important for us. Samuel and I think we were talking a lot during preparing all of the classes for the course, and that was also very important for us on the different level to be able to, okay, let's do this, so we can still do the slides today. Let's also add this topic and that topic because it can be relevant for some of the students, and we always want to teach more and more. And sometimes we also need to take a break, and okay, maybe not all of the content is relevant. We need to scratch that and scratch this, and having someone to talk with is also, I think, very important.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you all. I have to say, I just feel ridiculously privileged to have been able to be part of this session with the three of you. After seeing all of this, I absolutely consider all of you role models for myself as an instructor, and there's a lot that I've learned from this that I'm really hoping to be able to implement. So I think that is a wonderful point to end up on with our session here. So our next session starts after a 5-minute break, so everyone can relax for a little bit. And when we come back on the hour, Glenn Goldman will be hosting Toffer Marafi and Michael Wagner speaking about some AI topics, which is essentially, a part of where we ended. So this session was really good about prepping a segue into the next one. So thank you, everyone here, all the presenters here for this session, and all of our attendees. Please stick around. The program, the content is just phenomenal. So thank you, and I can't wait for the next session to start soon. So I'm going to keep
Thank you,
my
Nick.
camera on. Yeah, anyone who's
Thanks, Nick.
presenter or host is welcome to turn on their cameras. This is kind of social minutes. So, and thank you everybody.